Your brain is optimized for survival in a world that no longer exists. Every impulse purchase, every financing decision, every treat-yourself moment, it's Stone Age wiring in a digital economy. And this mismatch costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. This content is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute financial advice. The goal here is understanding, not instruction. This video explores the neurological and evolutionary reasons humans are terrible with money. Your brain evolved for immediate survival, not long-term wealth building. By the end, you'll understand the specific brain mechanisms that sabotage financial decisions, why these aren't character flaws but predictable biology, and what psychological shifts can override these ancient patterns. Let's start with the fundamental mismatch. Your brain was shaped by 3 million years of evolution in environments where scarcity was constant, threats were immediate, and long-term planning meant. Next week, not next decade. Food was uncertain, shelter was precarious, danger was everywhere. The humans who survived weren't the ones who saved resources for 30 years from now. They were the ones who consumed resources immediately when available because tomorrow might never come. That wiring is still active. Your brain is running software designed for the African savanna while trying to navigate modern financial markets, credit systems, and compound interest. The mismatch is profound. Here's the first mechanism that sabotages wealth: hyperbolic discounting. This is your brain's tendency to dramatically overvalue immediate rewards and undervalue delayed rewards. A classic study demonstrates this. People are offered a choice: receive $100 today or $110 in 1 week. Most people choose $100 today even though waiting 1 week gives a 10% return, which annualized is 520%. That's an incredible return for doing nothing, but the brain can't process it that way. The immediate reward feels real and tangible. The delayed reward feels abstract and uncertain, so people choose the smaller immediate amount even when it's financially irrational. This happens with every financial decision. Spending money today provides immediate satisfaction. Investing money provides delayed satisfaction years or decades away. Your brain heavily discounts that future satisfaction. So spending feels more valuable than investing even when the math clearly favors investing. You're not being foolish, you're being human. Your brain is doing exactly what evolution programmed it to do: prioritize now over later. The mechanism gets worse with financial stress. When you're under stress, your brain's discount rate becomes even more extreme. Future rewards are discounted so heavily they almost disappear. This is why poverty is self-reinforcing. When you're financially stressed, your brain becomes incapable of making long-term decisions because it's in pure survival mode. Every decision is evaluated on immediate impact. Can I eat today? Can I pay rent this month? Long-term wealth building becomes psychologically impossible, not because poor people lack discipline, but because their brains are in a different operating mode. Scarcity hijacks cognition. Studies show that financial stress reduces cognitive function by the equivalent of losing 13 IQ points. It's not permanent, it's situational. But while you're under financial stress, your brain literally cannot think long-term. The prefrontal cortex, which handles planning and delayed gratification, is suppressed. The limbic system, which handles immediate threat response, is amplified. You're operating in emergency mode. And in emergency mode, saving for retirement 30 years away is not a priority. Here's the second mechanism: loss aversion. Your brain feels losses approximately twice as intensely as equivalent gains. Losing $100 hurts more than gaining $100 feels good. This asymmetry shapes every financial decision. When you think about investing, your brain doesn't weigh the potential gain against the potential loss equally. It weighs the potential loss twice as heavily. So even when investments have positive expected returns, they feel risky and uncomfortable. This is why most people avoid the stock market even though historically it provides strong returns over time. The fear of loss dominates the calculation. The brain imagines losing money and experiences actual pain. The possibility of gaining money provides much less emotional impact, so the default choice is to avoid the risk entirely. Keep money in cash where it slowly loses value to inflation, but at least you won't experience the pain of a market downturn. This is irrational by financial math, but completely rational by brain chemistry. Your brain is optimized to avoid pain, not to maximize wealth. Loss aversion also explains why people hold on to losing investments too long. You bought a stock at $50 per share, it drops to $30 per share. Selling would realize a $20 loss. Your brain experiences that as painful, so you hold, you wait for it to recover. You tell yourself it will come back. This is called loss aversion combined with status quo bias. Selling makes the loss real and permanent. Holding keeps the loss theoretical and reversible. Your brain prefers the uncertainty of holding to the certainty of realizing a loss. But economically, this makes no sense. The money is already lost. Whether you sell or hold doesn't change that. What matters is what you do with the $30 per share you still have. Should it stay in this underperforming investment or move to something better? Your brain can't evaluate this rationally because it's stuck on the pain of the original loss. This pattern keeps people trapped in bad decisions for years. They're not stupid, they're loss averse, and loss aversion is hardwired. The third mechanism is hedonic adaptation. Your brain adapts to improved circumstances incredibly quickly. You get a raise, it feels amazing for about 2 weeks, then it's normal, you're back to your baseline level of happiness. This is why lifestyle inflation is so powerful and so destructive. Every time your income increases, you upgrade your lifestyle, better apartment, nicer car, more expensive habits. Each upgrade feels great initially, then you adapt. The new level becomes normal. And because you've adapted, it no longer provides satisfaction. So you need the next upgrade to feel good again. You're on a hedonic treadmill. You keep running, you keep upgrading, but you never get ahead because your brain keeps resetting what normal means. Meanwhile, your spending has increased permanently while the satisfaction was temporary. This is the mechanism that keeps high earners broke. They earn more and more, but they're always spending everything because they're chasing a satisfaction that disappears as soon as they achieve it. The evolutionary logic makes sense. If early humans achieved a better food source, they needed to quickly return to vigilance. Celebrating for too long meant getting eaten by a predator. So brains evolved to adapt quickly to good circumstances and refocus on threats. That was adaptive for survival. It's maladaptive for wealth building, because wealth building requires sustained satisfaction from not upgrading your lifestyle. It requires feeling good about the gap between what you earn and what you spend. But your brain can't maintain that feeling. The gap stops feeling like an achievement and starts feeling like deprivation. So you close the gap by spending more. You're not weak, you're adapted, and adaptation is destroying your wealth. Here's the fourth mechanism, present bias. Your brain treats your future self as a different person. When you think about yourself in 20 years, your brain activates the same regions that activate when you think about strangers. There's no strong identification. Future you is somebody else. This matters enormously for financial decisions. When you choose between spending money today or saving for retirement, your brain frames it as giving money to a stranger. Why would you sacrifice your current pleasure to help some stranger decades from now? It feels irrational. The person making the sacrifice is you now. The person receiving the benefit is future you, who your brain doesn't recognize as the same entity. So present bias wins. You spend today. Future you can deal with the consequences, except future you is still you. And when you arrive at that future, you'll be dealing with the consequences of decisions made by past you who treated you like a stranger. This mechanism explains why retirement savings is so difficult. You're asking present you to give up resources for the benefit of a person your brain doesn't identify with. It's psychologically similar to charity. You're being asked to sacrifice for someone else's well-being, except that someone is you, but your brain can't process it that way. The neural activation patterns show that future self and strangers are processed identically. So retirement savings feels altruistic when it should feel selfish. You're helping yourself, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like you're helping a stranger at your own expense. This is why visualization exercises sometimes help. Studies show that when people are shown digitally aged photographs of themselves, their savings rates increase. Seeing future you makes future you feel more real. Your brain starts to identify that stranger as you, and once the identification happens, sacrificing today for tomorrow becomes easier. You're not helping a stranger anymore, you're helping yourself. The mechanism is still present bias, but the intervention creates enough identification to weaken the bias. The fifth mechanism is social comparison. Your brain determines satisfaction not through absolute measures but through relative comparisons. You don't evaluate whether your life is good in some objective sense. You evaluate whether your life is better or worse than the people around you. This is deeply evolutionary. In small tribes, relative status determined access to resources and mates. Absolute wealth meant nothing. What mattered was where you ranked within your group. Your brain still operates this way. It's constantly scanning your environment to determine your relative position. And modern life has made this mechanism destructive because your comparison group is no longer limited to 50 people in your tribe. It's thousands of people on social media, in your extended network, in media and advertising. You're comparing yourself to everyone. And in an infinite comparison group, you always rank low because there's always someone with more. This drives consumption. You see someone with a nicer car and your brain registers a status threat. You're falling behind, so you upgrade to close the gap. But upgrading doesn't solve the problem because your comparison group also upgrades. You're competing in a race that has no finish line. Everyone is trying to outrank everyone else through visible consumption. The result is that everyone spends more while no one's relative position improves. You're all running faster on the same treadmill. The brain mechanism makes sense evolutionarily. Relative status matter. But in a world of infinite comparison, this mechanism bankrupts you. You're spending money to win a competition that can't be won because the goalposts move every time you think you're catching up. The only escape is to stop playing. To consciously reject social comparison as a driver of decisions. Your brain won't do this automatically. It requires deliberate psychological intervention to override the mechanism. Let's look at the compound effect of these mechanisms over time. Person A and Person B both start at age 25 earning $45,000 annually. Both receive regular raises and end their careers earning $90,000 at age 60. Person A's brain operates on default settings. Hyperbolic discounting means they prioritize immediate spending over future investing. Loss aversion means they avoid the stock market and keep money in low-return savings. Hedonic adaptation means every raise triggers lifestyle inflation. Present bias means they don't identify with future self, so retirement savings feels like charity. Social comparison means they spend to maintain relative status. Over 35 years, person A saves about 5% of income. They accumulate maybe $200,000 by age 60. They're still working because they have to. Their brain mechanisms, operating normally, produced financial fragility. Person B has the same brain mechanisms but has learned to override them. They understand hyperbolic discounting, so they automate investing before they see the money. Loss aversion is managed by not checking investment accounts frequently, reducing emotional exposure to volatility. Hedonic adaptation is countered by consciously maintaining lifestyle despite income growth. Present bias is addressed through visualization exercises that make future self feel real. Social comparison is rejected by curating social environment and ignoring status games. Over 35 years, person B saves 25% of income. They accumulate over $1.2 million by age 60. They can retire if they choose. Their financial security came not from earning more but from overriding default brain mechanisms. Same starting point, same income trajectory, completely different outcomes. The difference is psychological. Here's why these mechanisms are so hard to overcome. They're not thoughts or beliefs you can argue away. They're automatic processes that happen before conscious reasoning. By the time you're aware of a financial impulse, your brain has already generated it, evaluated it, and recommended action. Hyperbolic discounting doesn't ask your permission. It just makes future rewards feel smaller than present rewards. Loss aversion doesn't wait for your approval. It just makes losses hurt twice as much as gains feel good. Hedonic adaptation doesn't consult you. It just resets your baseline satisfaction regardless of circumstances. These mechanisms operate in the background, constantly shaping every decision. You experience the output as feelings and impulses. You want to buy something, you don't want to invest in something volatile. You feel like you deserve an upgrade. These feel like your authentic desires, but they're generated by ancient brain mechanisms that have nothing to do with your actual long-term interests. This is why willpower fails. People try to overcome these mechanisms through pure discipline. They tell themselves to save more, spend less, invest despite fear, resist upgrades. It works for a while, maybe weeks, maybe months. Then it fails because willpower is a limited resource and the brain mechanisms are automatic and infinite. You're fighting your own neurology. The fight is exhausting. Eventually you lose because the mechanisms don't get tired. They're always operating. Willpower depletes, mechanisms don't. So relying on willpower to build wealth is a losing strategy. You might succeed temporarily, but the default mechanisms will eventually win. The only sustainable approach is to design your environment and systems to work with your brain mechanisms rather than against them. Here's what working with your brain looks like. Hyperbolic discounting is managed through automation. You set up automatic transfers from checking to investment accounts the day your paycheck arrives. The money never enters your conscious awareness. Your brain can't discount a reward it never sees. Loss aversion is managed through infrequency. You check your investment accounts once per quarter, not daily. This reduces emotional exposure to volatility. Your brain doesn't experience the pain of daily market fluctuations. Hedonic adaptation is managed through gratitude practices and lifestyle caps. You consciously appreciate what you have before your brain resets to baseline. You set rules that prevent lifestyle inflation regardless of income growth. Present bias is managed through visualization and identity work. You create psychological connection with future self. You make future self feel real and present in current decisions. Social comparison is managed through environmental design. You curate your social media. You avoid environments that trigger comparison. You consciously choose reference groups that align with your values rather than your income. None of this is about willpower. It's about system design. You're not fighting your brain, you're redirecting it. Your brain wants immediate rewards. Give it immediate rewards through small daily wins rather than purchases. Your brain fears loss. Reduce its exposure to information about losses. Your brain adapts to improvement. Slow the rate of lifestyle change so adaptation doesn't erase satisfaction. Your brain treats future you as a stranger. Make future you visible and real through specific visualization. Your brain compares to others. Control who it compares to by controlling your environment. These interventions work with your neurology, not against it. They accept that your brain is running ancient software, and they design modern solutions that accommodate those ancient patterns. There's a particular intervention that deserves specific attention: mental accounting. Your brain naturally creates separate mental buckets for money based on its source and intended purpose. You treat a tax refund differently from your salary even though it's all money. You treat birthday cash differently from money you earned. You treat a windfall gain differently from regular income. This is irrational. Economically, money is fungible. A dollar from any source has the same value, but your brain doesn't work that way. It labels money based on story and context. You can use this mechanism strategically. Create separate accounts with specific purposes: one account for investing, never touched; one account for bills and necessities; one account for discretionary spending. Your brain will treat these as separate buckets, and you'll be less likely to raid the investing account for spending because it's labeled differently in your mental accounting system. You're not fighting the irrational mechanism. You're using it to create boundaries that protect long-term goals from short-term impulses. Let's address the most common objection. If these brain mechanisms are universal, why does anyone build wealth? If hyperbolic discounting affects everyone, if loss aversion is hardwired, if hedonic adaptation resets everyone's baseline, why do some people succeed financially while others don't? The answer is environmental influence and deliberate training. Some people grow up in environments that accidentally counter these mechanisms. They observe parents who model delayed gratification. They're taught from childhood that future planning matters. They internalize narratives about money that override default brain patterns. These people aren't more disciplined. They were conditioned differently. Their automatic responses were shaped by environment before they were conscious of them. They have the same brain mechanisms but different defaults because their early environment programmed different patterns. For people who didn't have this environmental advantage, change is still possible, but it requires deliberate reprogramming. This means repetition. Your brain learns through repetition. If you force yourself to choose the delayed reward repeatedly, eventually that choice becomes automatic. The mechanism of hyperbolic discounting doesn't disappear, but you build a competing habit that wins. More often, you're not eliminating the bias. You're training a counterbias. This takes time. Studies suggest it requires 60 to 90 days of consistent repetition before a new behavior becomes automatic. Most people quit before that threshold because they're using willpower, which depletes. The key is to reduce the willpower requirement by making the new behavior as easy as possible. Automate it, simplify it, remove friction. The easier the behavior, the less willpower required, the longer you can maintain it until it becomes automatic. Here's the psychological shift that matters most. Stop viewing financial decisions as moral tests. Your brain mechanisms are not character flaws. Hyperbolic discounting doesn't make you weak. Loss aversion doesn't make you cowardly. Hedonic adaptation doesn't make you greedy. Present bias doesn't make you selfish. Social comparison doesn't make you shallow. These are universal human brain functions that evolved for survival in different environments. They're not good or bad, they just are. Recognizing this removes shame from the equation. You're not failing when you experience these impulses. You're being human. The question isn't whether you have these mechanisms, you do. The question is whether you've learned to work with them strategically. Most people haven't because they were never taught that these mechanisms exist. They think financial struggle is personal failure. They blame themselves for impulses that are neurologically inevitable. This shame prevents learning because they're too busy feeling bad about themselves to study the actual mechanisms and design effective interventions. So here's what we've covered. Your brain evolved for immediate survival in resource-scarce environments, not for long-term wealth building in modern economies. 5 key mechanisms sabotage financial decisions. Hyperbolic discounting makes immediate rewards feel more valuable than larger delayed rewards. Loss aversion makes losses hurt twice as much as equivalent gains feel good. Hedonic adaptation rapidly resets your baseline satisfaction, driving lifestyle inflation. Present bias makes your brain treat future self as a stranger, undermining retirement savings. Social comparison drives consumption as you try to maintain relative status in an infinite comparison group. These mechanisms compound over decades, creating massive differences in financial outcomes between people with identical incomes. Willpower fails because these mechanisms are automatic and infinite, while willpower is conscious and finite. The solution is system design, not discipline. Automation, environmental curation, mental accounting, visualization, and deliberate habit formation that work with your brain mechanisms rather than against them. This means your financial outcome isn't determined by your character or your willpower. It's determined by whether you understand your brain and whether you've designed systems that accommodate its ancient wiring. The people who build wealth aren't more virtuous or more disciplined. They just learn to work with their neurology instead of fighting it. This is learnable. These mechanisms are universal, which means the interventions are universal. What works for one brain works for others because the underlying architecture is the same. Understanding this is the first step. You can't override mechanisms you don't know exist. Once you see how your brain generates financial impulses, you can begin designing systems that redirect those impulses toward long-term wealth building instead of short-term consumption. It's not about changing who you are. It's about changing what you do with what you are. If you value calm, educational explanations about wealth psychology and the invisible forces that shape financial decisions, consider subscribing to Wealth Explained 360.